what's good, fellow cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from April 8th to the 14th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. If you want to learn how to take advantage of this investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. Try to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry, identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth a lot more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps and the growth potential of new markets coming on, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. Of course, pending the incremental reform we're waiting on, which is essentially the DEA confirming what HHS reported in August of 2023, that cannabis has medicinal value and therefore they recommend moving it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Thing is, that was 7.5 months ago. It's only supposed to take 6 months, and if we hit the end of April and it doesn't happen, that's 8 months. And so, do you think it's never going to happen and we're all more royally fucked? It's possible. Or do you think it's just going to happen fashionably late like we would expect from a corrupt government agency like the DEA? Either way, the suspense continues, as does the discrimination, until we hit this tipping point. But thank you, WeedStreet420. His new report, the 2024 Vangst job report, found that there are now 440,445 full-time equivalent jobs, and that's full-time, so that's a big deal. And I believe that's up from 417,000 last year. While nationwide annual cannabis sales increased to $28.8 billion in 2023, that's still a double-digit rise over 2022. What other American-made industries are growing at double digits that face the discrimination and get shit on by Congress and regulators, trying to do everything they can to dismantle it, yet and keeps delivering a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative? And so you love to see it. You can pause to read if you're interested. Now, I did not find the link, but I'll try to get it so that I can post it in the comments tomorrow. But more here, as these are America's top cannabis job markets. Of course, California, Michigan, Illinois, the big three. You got a full list down here with the numbers rising over time. And so, yeah, it did go from 428,000 in 2022 down to 417, back up to 440,000. Well, last one down here, job gains and losses in the past year. And so this is gains in the past year for each market, and then losses in the past year for each market. It looks like we got a bit of a West Coast, East Coast battle, because if we exclude Massachusetts, this is all the mature Western markets, unfortunately losing some jobs, while all the Eastern markets that are turning on are providing a lot of employment to more and more Americans. And so with that, from Eleanor Mueller, who writes for Politico, two people familiar tell me that McHenry, Waters, and Schumer discussed attaching stablecoin and cannabis banking legislation to the FAA bill today. And so this came out as of April 11th, which would have been Thursday. And I found that interesting because from what I understood, McHenry was against SAFE previously, and it seems like they've struck a deal. And then this actually came out on April 10th from Do the Right Thing. So great job tweeting this the day before and seeing it actually happen, as lawmakers are floating the idea of packaging stablecoin legislation with the Senate cannabis banking bill and attaching it to the FAA authorization. It seems like, hey, maybe McHenry and Waters have struck a deal that's going to allow SAFE to pass. And so obviously we'd love that to be the case. And this was the article from Politico Pro. I believe it's behind a paywall, but it essentially discusses what that tweet was all about. And so we're going to have to wait and see, obviously, if this ends up making it through. But what's interesting, from Jeffries on US Cannabis, we have a timeline too. And so apparently the FAA extension is set to expire on May 10th. So whatever new FAA legislation, which includes the stablecoin and cannabis banking bill, has to pass by May 10th. And while we're all waiting on the DEA to respond to HHS by the end of April, this is another possible timeline to add into just the mix. And it just has to pass by that date from my understanding. And it seems like SAFE might make its way in there. And so fingers crossed, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, all the links will be down there. But just wanted to share this clip as a bit of an update on, hey, when the fuck are we going to hear from the DEA? Because we've been waiting 7.5 months. And clearly, if cannabis is medicine, which the government deemed it is, and many of us have known all along, we want to be able to get access to people that might need it. And so just going to play this clip from Nancy Mace to the FDA head a few minutes ago. Do you think rescheduling will happen this year? And then his long non-answer, but we'll just play it.
Cannabis should move to Schedule 3. Well, I and many cannabis advocates believe this does not go far enough.
And we all agree descheduling should be what happens, but we're not able to get that, and so we'll take what we can get as opposed to keeping the status quo alive any fucking longer. And thank you, Nancy Mace, for at least asking this question.
This is a long overdue start. So my first question today is, I understand this issue now rests with the DEA. And I'm curious if you have an update on the timing of their decision.
We're going to South Carolina. We know, I don't even know, but if I did, I think so the timing of regulatory decisions is something that would be up to the DEA.
You think it'll happen this year?
I know that there's no reason for the DEA to delay. I think they just have to take into account all the regulations that are in place.
Okay.
Well, that's great. I mean, it doesn't tell us anything we don't already know. Again, these guys are great actors and good at delivering nothing burgers. Well, do the right thing. This Reddit user might have spotted something important yesterday. So again, take these with a grain of salt. Just trying to find whatever clues I can to pave the way for what's hopefully to come, which is the DEA doing their fucking job. But DEA has appeared to change their default response when explaining the purpose of the 5-factor analysis and now references both HHS and DEA in it. Go back through each filing since 2019 and check for yourself. Now, I'll admit, I didn't do that, though this link will be in the comments. I'm trusting do the right thing here. Though this is apparently the old text and this is the new text, where there's just no mention of HHS, which is technically the highest health body in the U.S. government. Well, now here, new, HHS and DEA both applied tests to deem whether something is scientific or not. So are we going to get a different answer from the last time this was done? Well, obviously, we're hopeful, and all the writing is on the wall that we will. It's just a matter of being patient and waiting and not stressing too much about it ultimately. Enjoy your life, buy your ticket, and take the ride when the ride ends up picking us up. And so, right thing, asking all the right questions again. For those wondering how long this is supposed to take, we know it's 6 months, but here's an example. As the DEA got an HHS recommendation in November of 2023, 3 months after HHS recommended moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, that these opioids should go to Schedule 1. And apparently the DEA issued a proposed rule April 10th, Wednesday this past week, for these drugs. And so that took them about 5 months. Why are they doing that first versus, releasing cannabis and giving so many Americans a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative? I don't know. Basically highlighting that they can do whatever they want. But, folks, the writing is still on the wall. And as I've been showing you week after week, everything is coming together. Germany this time, Florida Supreme Court. And so it's just a matter of when are these bastards going to do their job? And just keep in mind, for example, Kass, he's a large hedge fund manager, and we've seen him go bullish, bearish over the last few years. And while this tweet feels like it was years ago, it was less than a month ago. And he says, we have learned yesterday that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration shortly approved a rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3. And that the biggest theoretical legal hurdle, that bullshit 1961 UN Drug Convention that was put in place by a racist American, likely motivated by a lot of bureaucracy and industry behind him funding him, to try and criminalize people around the globe for self-medicating with substances like cannabis that we've used for thousands of years. And so, obviously bullshit. When is it going to happen? It's not in our hands. It's out of our control. But let me know what you think in the comments. With that, though, I just wanted to highlight, I'll admit I have not watched this full episode. The link will be in the comments, and I do plan to listen to it after. But I did just find it this morning as I'm putting this video together and just wanted to share some 2 cents from Don. And thank you, Don, for just being our DC source. And he's able to translate all the writing on the wall better than I could. And this is what he still thinks after everything that we're seeing. And so,
all right, so $64,000 question. After being here, you've said that you still feel confidently that we get rescheduling before the election, along with SAFE. You still agree with that?
Yeah, I think we have to.
Thank you, Don Murphy. I am hopeful too, especially with that addition of SAFER into the FAA that has to pass May 10th. This could finally be the vehicle to get it through. But link will be in the comments. And while we thought it's getting good, politicians always have to throw another dumb curveball in to highlight that they have every ambition of destroying the progress that the entire industry is being made. And so we know that this bill is not going to pass. I'm more just sharing it because highlighting what these criminals do professionally, it's fucked. Dennis Rudev, Schumer, Wyden, and Booker are planning to reintroduce a bill that has zero chance of ever passing, according to a report by Politico. Wasting valuable American time, resources. It's just these men deserve prison for so long. You cannot make this up. For anyone interested in even bothering to read it, I'm sure none of you are, but on to the studies, which we love to highlight as PubMed, Cannabidiol inhibits epithelial ovarian cancer, role of the gut microbiome as of April 11th, 2024. So fairly new. You can pause to read the abstract for all the details, but the main thing I wanted to highlight is the results showed that cannabidiol has a significant inhibitory effect on epithelial ovarian tumors. Sounds promising and sounds like something we ought to be researching as opposed to leaving alone and just letting sit there and collect dust, right? And so in vivo experiments, I forget exactly, I think that's probably in a test tube and not real, whereas in vitro is in human. Obviously, if we were to deschedule cannabis, we can do these in vitro studies, and that's why we all want to deschedule cannabis. So sounds promising though, hence why it should have never been put in the Schedule 1 in the first place. But all links will be in the comments, while from neuroscience, cannabis use linked to lower dementia risk. If you can believe that, April 9th, 2024, summary of the study. I invite you to pause to read, but I'm going to read through the key facts. Number 1, recreational cannabis use was associated with a significantly lower risk of subjective cognitive decline in adults over 45. Who would have thought that? Number 2, the study is unique in its examination of cannabis uses type, frequency, and method focusing on an older population. And 3, there was no significant difference in the odds of subjective cognitive decline related to cannabis consumption frequency and method, suggesting the potential role of THC content in protective effects against cognitive decline. And you can't make that shit up. When politicians want to put caps on THC because they're worried about the effects, it turns out that THC might have protective effects against cognitive decline. Right? I love the fact that we're studying because we're finding out more and more of this that could be possible. We got this one from Bentham Science, and this is the actual raw study from that write-up. So, association between cannabis use and subjective cognitive decline. Findings from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. And so, you can pause to read all of the details, but main thing to highlight results. Compared to non-cannabis users, recreational cannabis use was significantly associated with 96% decreased odds of subjective cognitive decline. Like, I had to read that multiple times because I was like, this sounds way too good to be true. Whereas medical and dual medical and non-medical cannabis use were also associated with decreased odds of subjective cognitive decline, although not significant. So cannabis consumption frequency and method were not significantly associated with subjective cognitive decline either. So pause to read the conclusions if you like. But again, sounds wild. We wouldn't know this if we weren't able to study a little bit. We need larger sample sizes, and all that will come after we hopefully move to Schedule 3 or outright deschedule, which should have been the case a long time ago. All the links will be in the comments. From Dove Press, traumatic brain injury outcomes after recreational cannabis use. Originally received in December of last year, published April 3rd of this year, 2024. And so pause to read all the details, but again, don't want to make this video too long, spending time on each. But the conclusion, the study adds evidence about the potentially neuroprotective effects of recreational cannabis for short and long-term post-TBI outcomes. These results need to be confirmed via prospective data collections, of course. More research would be great, and that can come after at least it moves from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, or outright descheduled and treated like alcohol as it always should have been. Well, from MSN.com, I usually don't share these, but just figured I'd share this story for the sake of any women out there that maybe have this problem. Endometriosis left me bedbound. Medical cannabis gave me my life back. And so apparently this woman, Sarah, has been ill since her late teens as she's got a heavy flow. Oh, sorry to hear that, Sarah. But doctors thought it was something else. They obviously prescribed her the wrong thing, and that didn't help her for a very long time. Doctor error, actually, unfortunately, the third leading cause of death, usually in the US. And so after being misdiagnosed for the last 2 decades, when she was 37, she was correctly diagnosed with this. And guess what? After suffering problems taking opioids, Miss Bardsley says she has got her life back after using medical cannabis. And so there's more to it. Of course, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, link in the comments, but it's a great story, and again, brought to you by the plant. And so from Taylor and Francis Online, cannabidiol improves the cognitive function of SAMP8AD model mice involving microbiota gut-brain axis. Again, another study in mice, because we can't study in humans for some stupid reason, although cannabis has never killed anybody. Main thing is just to highlight this study. Our findings demonstrated that CBD may be considered a beneficial therapeutic drug to counteract AD-mediated cognitive impairment and restore gut microbial functions associated with the observed neuroprotective mechanisms. Sounds similar to the findings they found in the first study. And so take from that what you will. Actually, is it the same as the first study? No, it's definitely not the same. So anyways, though, it does involve microbiome. And so I think that is it for the studies, though. And so, yeah, on to the numbers. High Finance, thank you for sharing this as the legal cannabis industry continues to grow, no doubt, as it should, because it's one of the few actually changing America for the better, helping fight the opioid epidemic, helping increase quality of life for patients that need access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, helping increase property values, all these other things that you would not expect to come when you end prohibition. And so from BDSA, that is the source of this, their predictions for the legal cannabis sales in 2024, global 40.7 billion, US 32 billion, Canada 5 billion, and international 3.5 billion. And now if all the dominoes do fall into place, as many have, and it's taken a long ass time, but these dominoes falling into place should pave the way for the next few years. And while we want everything to go as planned or according to plan, we have to prepare for it not to because of Murphy's Law. Shit always happens. But if they do, by 2028, they're expecting, and take these numbers with a grain of salt because it's still speculation, and reality is going to change things. But global market is going to be at 58 billion, US market at 46 billion. I imagine 6 billion of that is from Florida adult use alone. Canada 5.3 billion, and then international 7 billion. So take from that what you will. While an interesting one from Revelations Partners LP, thanks for sharing this one, as Jeffries, one of the big US investment firms, updated their price targets for US MSOs. Now, take these with a grain of salt, but we have not seen price targets like this since 2021. Well, I find a lot of these hilarious because Cannabis only getting to $3.80 Canadian. Yeah, right. Air Wellness only getting to $7.30 Canadian when previously it was at $45. Yeah, right. But the best thing for me, as someone holding heavy Cresco Labs bags, $50K invested at about $15.69, I'm going to make my $50K back and then some if this were to actually pan out. And, leads me to believe that it will, no doubt. And I mean, when you look at 2021 highs and how small and what these companies were doing then versus what they're doing now, how they've expanded and how they're preparing for upcoming markets, I mean, we're going to blow these old price targets out of the water, I think. So let me know what you think in the comments, but this just made me so happy to see because I was like, wow, it's been 3 years since we've seen that. And yeah, no shit. We're definitely setting up for this and more. Let me know what you think in the comments. So, but with that, sales data out of state says Michigan cannabis sales surge to March, which is to be expected, which we love to see. Though get this, 288.8 million, sales rose 10.6% sequentially from February to this new record level. But note, every single year, March, July, and December are the 3 big months where we see new record months. And so if we look at last year, 2023, the new record was set in March. I'm going to imagine that is likely July. Yep, that was the new record, and then new record in December. And so we see the same thing again, January, February dip because people bought so much weed for Christmas likely. The weather gets nicer, boom, we see the same thing jump up in March. And so, of course, since cannabis itself is medicine, the whole discrepancy between medical cannabis and rec seems to matter less when, you can just buy cannabis through the dispensary and it's the same medicinal product. More detail here if you wanted to pause to read. Well, price per gram going down, which is great for the consumer. But main thing to highlight, Michigan cannabis sales expanded 82.1% in 2021 to $1.79 billion, 27.9% in 2022 to $2.29 billion, and 33.3% to $3 billion in 2023. So far in 2024, they've already grown by 17.7%. Fascinating market to watch. And so as I mentioned with Illinois, they're getting lazy. They used to have these ready by like the 4th or 5th of every month. For whatever reason, a holiday happened and they've pushed it back to mid-month. And so put this link here, but I imagine on Monday or Tuesday this should be updated. So if you're watching it then, you can grab the link and likely get what new March numbers will be. And once this is updated in April, I'm sure we're going to see a spike back up in March like we saw in Michigan too. And so news out of Ohio, as apparently cannabis adult use is targeted to start for June. So that was a big scoop. Thank you, Margan Trow, reporter, for sharing. Ohio's rulemaking committee is set to approve regulations allowing rec cannabis sales as soon as June. Fucking love that. So for all the MSOs that have exposure in the state of Ohio, 5 stores, Verano, Green Thumb, Columbia Care, Cresco Labs, and Ascend Holdings, 3 stores for Air Wellness, 2 stores for Cureleaf, and 1 store for Trulieve and Jushi. And so with that, on to this one from Normal, more on Ohio, but essentially the details that, the new details that have been solidified. Adult use cannabis sales anticipated to begin ahead of schedule, as we just said, in mid-June. So this is the new plan, and existing medical dispensaries will receive dual licensing to sell cannabis to adults. And so all those MSOs mentioned will have priority, at least, or the luxury of supplying safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to the rest of the state through their existing medical dispensaries. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. While we keep moving along from the Dank Informer, we're going to start with this bit before we get into the numbers, but interesting change here for Green Thumb Industries in the latest Florida OMMU release. And I don't know what this means, of course, we're speculating, but let me know in the comments if you have any ideas. As of today, the MMTC name is GTI Florida LLC, where it was previously GTI Rise Dispensaries. Wonder if there's more to it than just the name change, possible restructuring. So good find though, because I would not have noticed that. So looking at sales for this past week for medical in Florida, only as of right now, April 5th to the 11th, they increased their qualified patient count to 878,724. So that's how many in Florida are getting access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, while Air opened a new dispensary in Fort Myers. And so let's look at the visuals. So total flower sales in ounces by company this past week. And so just notice here as well, GTI Florida LLC instead of GTI Rise Dispensaries. So you can pause to read. While total THC sales by milligrams by company, you can pause to read. Total CBD sales by milligrams by company, you can pause to read. And then total dispensing locations, as Trulieve is number 1, Verano is number 2, and Air Wellness is number 3. So with that, on to this one from Dennis Root. I'm just highlighting how big can the rec market in Florida become from Viridian. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but thanks for sharing what investment firms are sharing with you so that we can take a look at what they're thinking. And so, of course, the Florida Supreme Court approving the ballot is a big deal. It does need 60% to pass. And so while this is quite small, you might want to grab the link in the comments, but basically it highlights how big Florida is going to be. compared to the already largest markets in the US that exist. So worth grabbing that in the comments if you wanted to take a closer look. While a highlight out of Cannabis Business Times, what happens in a state like California when you tax the shit out of everybody, you destroy the industry, and now 15% of California cannabis businesses default on taxes as 2025 hike comes knocking. And so how do you destroy an industry? Socialist policies and bad regulations that tax the shit out of them, therefore robbing them of any profits. And that is how socialism has started to work in many U.S. states, especially out of California and some of the other far blue ones like New York, which we're going to get to in a moment. But you can pause to read more here, highlighting just the government putting their hands in every single pockets and taking everything they can. The fact that people haven't revolted in California yet is beyond me. But the other joke of a market in the U.S., New York's legal cannabis industry. New York Post seems proud to write that they've reached a new high with over 100 licensed pot shops raking in the green and making a measly few tens of millions, while the thousands of illicit ones are really making in money and not having to pay any taxes. Wouldn't that be great, right? And that's, again, how you take advantage of socialist regulations. You just realize there's no point complying and jumping through the regulatory hoops and framework. I might as well just go the illicit way and escape paying taxes and take the risks. And I imagine that's what all the illegal shops have been doing, since New York's not going to fucking do anything about them. And so they seem to be happy that they've now hit 100 licensed pot shops that, again, are not able to compete with the thousands of illicit ones selling cannabis at much cheaper prices. Apparently, there are 103 sellers in business, 44 in New York City. While 19 other licensed weed operators will open shortly and 35 other retail licenses were approved by the state board on Thursday. We haven't even tipped the iceberg yet, says CCB chairwoman Trayman Wright during Thursday's public meeting. Yeah, because you delayed thus far, hence why you're only at 100 stores, however many years later, with thousands of illicit shops popping up, selling cannabis, and a shirt for like a bulk price. You can't compete with that. And so get this, legal cannabis sales jumped 32% for the first 3 months of 2024 to 85 million from 62 million, which will equate to like maybe 10 million in taxes. When you look at what Michigan does, it's like New York could not have fucked it up any better. And they're however many years into their program. And so that's just as much light as I want to even give the clowns that run this until they fire them all and replace them. It's just what you're going to get. And so with that, from Pablo Zuanic, if you've been in this industry for a long time, you've heard the name. He used to be an analyst and now fortunately releases all this stuff for free. So thank you, Pablo. But he released 2 reports. One, as of yesterday, the FDA commissioner bifurcates. And while I have not gone through this one myself, I just wanted to share it in the comments if anyone's interested. But he does highlight what I highlighted at the beginning. It's now more than 7.5 months since HHS sent their recommendation. Supposedly, the 8-factor takes 3 to 6 months. And so why is it taking much longer? I don't know. But the other thing I did see on Twitter, I did not find it in here myself, but apparently Pablo makes the case that he thinks that the ruling could somehow have a different outcome for medical cannabis versus rec, and in the sense that the rescheduling could see rec cannabis go to Schedule 2 and then medical to Schedule 3 or something like that. I don't know. I just saw tweets about that, and apparently that might be in here, so take from that what you will. Again, Pablo has been wrong in the past, so I don't necessarily think he knows everything, and that him speculating on that means it's going to be true. I don't know, but this 13-page report will be in the comments, while there is another one on a brief primer on the Canadian LPs. So for anyone interested, whether it's High Tie or Sundial, or is it Sundial? Yeah. VFF, Tilray, whoever you're interested in, a lot of info on the LPs here, 22 pages of it for anyone that is interested. Link will be in the comments. Well, moving along, Weed Street 420 shared this. Now, it was interesting if this had any sort of impact on the U.S., but as of right now, it's only Canada, it seems. Rolling Stone LLC, I'm sure you've heard of that publication. It's not what it used to be. It's now more of a woke propaganda outlet versus the investigative, hard-hitting journalism that it was when we had Hunter S. Thompson. But they just applied to register 3 trademarks for online and retail sales of cannabis products and printed publications in the field of cannabis for Rolling Stone, Rolling Stoner, and Rolling Stoned. And so why this is interesting, though, is in Canada, we've recently just pulled back regulations on advertising, I believe, or there's been some efforts to try and do so to help the industry, fortunately. And what we do see down here is the agent is out of Ottawa, Ontario, and so actually just down the street from where I am. And so interestingly enough, does this mean, though, that some more loose advertising could be coming to Canada? That's kind of what I get out of it. And so let me know what you think in the comments. So it would be fascinating if this was for a state in the U.S. too, but seems to be only Canada as of right now. But online retail advertising, nightclub services, arenas. So who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments, though, while just highlighting where we're at and why this, move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Obviously, descheduling should have just been what we're getting. All that to say is Americans want to end prohibition, right? No one should be criminalized for cannabis. We know this. It's an older one, but 88% of Americans say that cannabis ought to be legal for medical or adult use, and that's both. No longer criminalizing is just what makes the most sense, because clearly you can consume cannabis and not be a criminal. A lot of the propaganda from past propagandists saying that it's a gateway drug, that's been proven false. If anything, alcohol is the gateway drug. Cannabis can be an exit drug from alcohol addiction and other addictions too. And so, hey, we've known this for how long? According to a 2021 study, and it's now 2024. And so, hey, we have until the end of this month, folks. I'm still hopeful we're going to get something. As much as I'm skeptical because we've been lied to for how long, I continue to have faith because I think we just have to. And that's really the good stuff for this past week. And here's some more laughs just to kind of point out the bullshit that we're dealing with and these propagandists that sadly do have deep pockets from, again, industries and bureaucrats that have wanted to keep this plant criminalized and out of the hands of, humans, where it's always been. And so from the Dank Informer, oh wait, let it be known, the cannabis prohibitionist well runs deep and is one big circle jerk. And I want to thank a lot of these guys for doing this research, because I should have already done it. Why didn't I think of this? It's always been there, I'm sure, this information, but at what point are we going to call out these clowns and expose them for the frauds that they are? So just ran through all of their public 501c IRS 990 forms and websites and figured out that they are all connected in some way. All three groups: SAM, Smart Approaches Against Marijuana, IASIC, I don't know them, and PopPot are domiciled in the state of Virginia according to their individual IRS Form 990. IASIC appears to be the main driver of the psychosis anti-cannabis narrative. So it's all organized. It's all opposition. The organization has connections to both SAM's Kevin Sabet and Parents Opposed to Pot, which are constantly spreading anti-cannabis propaganda based on fake science, essentially political science, and fake studies, or at least studies designed to look for harms that couldn't, so they just faked them. IASIC tries to position itself as some kind of expert medical and science organization on the subject of cannabis, but in reality, it appears to be pumping out Reefer Madness-style propaganda while trying to sound authoritative on the subject. Mom Strong is another group that has been spreading the psychosis narrative on X. This group appears to be comprised of people whose relatives experience tragedies and attaches an emotional component to the anti-cannabis rhetoric. Easy way to fool people to join your side and spit propaganda for you when they're very naive. Their webpage links to PopPot for donation. So it's all connected. Great job finding all this. And I might even try to do a little bit more digging later today to see if I can pull anything up. But on top of that, remember this bot guy, Jon Talcott, who has the worst takes I've ever seen on Twitter. Oh my God. And just when he thought it couldn't get any better, a tweet from Jon Talcott, April 7th. This is a warning. Sam will be reporting all X accounts repeating the false statement that we are funded by Big Pharma. We will also be bringing actions in court for libel. Well, first of all, nice try, but it's the truth, so you can't. You have been warned, and smoking pot as medicine is a fraud. Apparently, smoking it recreationally reduces your chances of cognitive decline, though, by 96%. So suck it, Jon Talcott. And if you can believe it, after all of this, he literally is a SPAC lawyer for a cannabis company, represents Northern Lights Acquisition Corp. In a $185 million business combination agreement with Safe Harbor Financial. So I'll put this link in the comments if you want to read more about how this douchebag, who is so anti-cannabis, works for cannabis companies too. You just, hypocrisy like this should be jailed. When you get this bad and this disgusting, it's just painful. And if you thought it couldn't get any funnier, thank you, WeedStreet420, for finding this. A write-up by a doctor, which is featured here. I'm a doctor and I went to college with Kevin Sabet. He's still up to no good. Imagine despising this man so much because he's a shitty, fraudulent human being with a lot of blood on his hands that you literally write up a full report exposing that he's not a physician and he's a total fraud. And so this link will be in the comments. Fascinating, right? But it highlights, I have seen his activity to be far from credible, fact-based scientific reasoning, because it's all political science. To be clear, he has no formal education in any of the relevant fields, right, which would equip him. He's not a physician. It seems like he went to a lot of training institutes and got these kind of fake diplomas. And I believe his doctorate is in sociology, right? So he's not even a real doctor. And so the author of this, Sunil Kumar Agarwal, thank you for despising this man so much and having the courage to tell the truth that you want to write up a whole report exposing this man, because long overdue. Man, skinny loser with lots of potential. I think I'm going to be a propagandist for the government. I'm going to push fake political science and get my pockets filled with blood money. I think that's what I want to do. And imagine that. As of last year, 100,000 dead from the opiate epidemic, and the problem is cannabis. You cannot make this shit up. And so this is the write-up for anyone that is interested. Again, the link will be in the comments. I think we might have one more. Here's proof Kevin Sabet is a liar. During a forum on legalization, Kevin Sabet showed 2 bags of candies, pretending one was sprayed with THC and the other was regular candy, saying there's no way to tell the difference. But it's fake, as someone actually stole these 2 bags, apparently, then tested them to find what was in it, and turns out he obviously lied because neither of these had any THC, but in Massachusetts, where this thing happened, apparently it's illegal to lie at any sort of thing like this. And so we're going to watch the video. It's about 4 minutes. I'll put it up to 1.5 speed, so it goes a little bit fast. But just again, highlighting the type of person this loser is and why we feel so good just slapping it right back in his face where it's deserved to be put all along.
Parents should ask themselves whether they can tell which bag of candy here is marijuana and which one isn't.
And neither are marijuana. That's the best part.
Well, you can try them if you want to, maybe afterwards. If you can tell, if you can't...
And the confidence. This man is a lunatic, a psychopath, to be that confident, blatantly lie, just to try and push your agenda.
Tell, which you probably can. I bet you your kid can't tell either. When these things are lying around, the reason emergency room admissions in Colorado...
Lying around, and then he goes emergency room admissions because of the poisoning. Cannabis is not a poison. It can't be poisoned by something that isn't toxic to the human body. My God, fucking idiot.
Kids under 5, and I don't think anyone would dispute this, has gone significantly, double, is because these kind of things are lying around. They're marketed, of course they're marketed to young people, and young people are interested in them. They are essentially, again, one of those real, they are the real candy here, essentially sprayed with THC, and there's no way to tell the difference. And that's what Massachusetts voters are voting on. I don't care if an adult wants to smoke marijuana.
And so in an office in Massachusetts, it's apparently illegal to lie.
They shouldn't go to prison for that, but you really want to legalize these? I'm not sure normal wants to do that. I mean, this is for people who want to make a ton of money in Massachusetts. They don't make it by selling joints to baby boomers who are 65 and older. I hate to break it to you.
Actually, they do.
These candies and
They do.
You
You can check the sales data. They do, you fucking idiot, Kevin. So, love this. Someone stole the edibles. Thank you, Keith Saunders. Thank you, Keith Saunders. You're the man. So get this. But I mean, the saddest part after all of this is, has anything happened to Kevin Sabet? Right?
Tonight at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate in Columbia Point, Boston, Massachusetts, Kevin Sabet, who is a former assistant advisor to multiple drug czars and presidents, presented these 2 bags of candy, claiming that one or the other of them has THC, and can you tell by looking? We're going to go and get them tested, and we'll find out. Because either one or the other of these contains THC, in which case he committed a violation of perhaps federal law by bringing them into Massachusetts, or illegally obtained them while in Massachusetts, or he did a counterfeit drug presentation and said that one of these has THC in it when it doesn't, which is also a crime in Massachusetts. He presented them to Madeline Martinez, my fellow normal board member. That's distribution, whether it is full of THC or not, because he claimed that one of them was. We're going to go down, we're going to get these tested, and you're going to get results. We'll figure it out soon enough. Hey, Kevin, welcome to Massachusetts.
Oh, logic and reason, man. If only he was held accountable. Fuck. And so, I'm going to stop it here because you can obviously tell where this goes. Neither of those bags had any THC. He lied, of course, to try and prove his point at the expense of however many lives have been lost from the efforts that Sam pushes. Absolute horseshit. And so, while last few stories, sadly, the discrimination does continue until we fix this stupid federal overhang that should have never been put in place to begin with, as feds continue to seize legal pot in New Mexico at checkpoints. You think none of the feds have heard of states' rights, which supersede federal rights? And so apparently 2 years into rec cannabis being legal in New Mexico, one major problem persists. That the DEA hasn't done their job and this hasn't been changed. That's likely the major problem. And because of this, New Mexico cannabis businesses say federal agents are seizing their product at checkpoints. Absolute horseshit. And so when you think a Cole memo or an announcement from Merrick Garland not to go after legal businesses would have any sort of value or effect, well, it seems to not necessarily be the case. And while I'm only seeing this out of New Mexico, I'm sure it's happening elsewhere. So if you know if it's happening elsewhere, let me know. But this is, again, the discrimination that just needs to end when the DEA does their job. Come on, man. America is waiting on you guys. And so last ask for all of you, if you have not yet, folks, obviously now is the time to do it. Tell your senators to support the Safer Banking Act. As much as we've done a lot of work in the past, it's only going to happen if you guys make noise and reach out to your state reps and, let them know that you want this done. So if you haven't yet, link will be in the bottom of the comments, but please consider reaching out to your state rep and give them a few reasons. We need to pass SAFE to make America safer by getting $30 billion of cash in the banks and off the streets so that criminals don't target these dispensaries because they know that they're flush with cash. And then, of course, getting this legal money in the banking system so that we can provide bank accounts for these 440,000 in the industry. And so all eyes are on next week. Why? Well, of course, it's worth noting that 420 is on a Saturday. And so from April 15th to April 19th, this is Second Chance Month. Are we going to get anything? We'll find out. So let me know in the comments if you think we will. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next Sunday with another episode of This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.